Bespoke miscellaneous charts, Wilkinson plot. And this is what it looks like. A Wilkinson plot, also known as a bee swarm, actually gives you a very interesting way of visualizing clusters of data and data points together. For example, if you just look at this without knowing the context, you can see that there's 2 points that are far above the rest, whereas we have a cluster of points and then kind of a small medium cluster. In any case, Wilkinson plots are not out of the box. However, they can easily be created in Tableau with a combination of a level of detail expression, a few table calculations, which you should be well prepared for. So, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and let's open up Tableau. So the first thing we are going to do is to load our sample superstore dataset. So let's click on Microsoft Excel, locate your file, double click on sample superstore. In your query editor, let's take orders and drop it into the query panel. From here, we don't need to do anything more, so let's go to sheet 1. We are going to create a few calculations, but first let's create a parameter to allow us to control some values. So let's call this bin size. Let this be an integer and set the current value to 10,000. I want us to then create the following: cells bin. I want this to be fixed state sum of cells divided by bin size. I want us to wrap the whole of that in an integer and then at the end multiply by bin size. So that gives us our cells bin. I want us to create an index calculation now. So that's index, and here we'll have index minus 1. We're almost done. Click OK. What I want us to do now is create another calculated field for TC max per bin. This is going to be used to shift our Wilkinson plot. Here we are going to write Windows max and index. Let's click OK. Finally, our last calculation will be y, which will be index subtract DC max bin divided by 2. This is just to shift our values. So let's actually play with this a little bit. So let's take state and drop that into detail. Let's take cells bin. State wanted to create a map, we don't want that. Let's take cells bin and drop that into columns. Let's right click and turn this into a dimension. Nice and simple. Let's take index and drop this into rows for now. Now what I want us to do is right click on index, go to compute using and select state. As you can see, we now have our dots positioned, but it's not quite a Wilkinson plot because we want this to all be spread out across a central line. So let's take our Y object and bring it next to index. Let's right click, compute using, state. You can see the difference here. Again, it's just a different way of visualizing your data. But what we've done is create the calculation so that we've calculated the maximum number here. We've divided by 2 and then we've subtracted just to move it slightly down a bit. So let's remove our index Now we don't need the y-axis, so let's remove that. Let's rename the header. Let's just call it cells. Now we can right click, format. Let's get rid of the zero line. There's a zero line or the grid lines and zero lines. Because we like our shape, let's increase the size. And let's call this our Wilkinson Plot. This is also called a bee swarm. I've seen this used in great effect when it comes to setting up football teams or just seeing how groups and clusters work together. So for example, here you can see that you have an outlier. California, New York, these are massive outliers. Texas, again, some of the big states, they're pushing at the top. But what about these ones here? The Wilkinson plot allows you to see your data in a slightly different way. But as you can see, it's not the most complicated chart in terms of data densification, table calculations. It uses a view, but it creates a very nice looking effect. So 1, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. 2, go through it again and try to understand it. Try to apply this to some of your data sets potentially. But above all else, I hope you had fun and see you in the next tutorial.